Hi, everybody. You know who I am, and we're honored to have a guest, a family, the Carlings and their son Mitchell, Leanne, and Graham. You know what the Godfather series is all about. We have it in a bar because in the movie The Godfather, a lot of the nefarious things happened in either bars and or restaurants. The back end of this is a pub, which we'll be using again. During the Corona era, we didn't use this. We didn't sit close together, etc. And we used the big part of the pavilion, as you well know. But they're here for the seminar, which starts tonight, and which I'm pleased that they agreed to be interviewed, along with their son, who is 14 in years, but ostensibly a lot older in his thought process. I was just telling him a story before we went on film of my Princeton talk 3 weeks ago or so, which I thought the youngest in the audience was a 16-year-old, and it winds up a 14-year-old who's also a son of a mentee couple that I trained several years ago. But the series is for them to relate their history, more or less, of how they utilize, not specifically QLA, and how it's enhanced, if it has enhanced, I'm not putting words in their mouth, their life, their business, to be all you can be, which is what the program is. Now, they started, as you'll hear more when, for those of you that are listening to the clips of the seminar during the week, they started out several years ago, and now they're more or less the flavor of the day in Scotland. For sure, the flavor of the day in Scotland for a couple. I won't say every day that I see something about them, but if you follow them on social media, every day you see something about them, and so it's pleased, and I'm especially pleased when they use some of my phrases, although they don't give me credit at the bottom, but I know where they got them. But they've been very successful, super successful, and they're going to tell themselves, and they want their son to understand, and that's why he's part of this interview. And he'll have a chance to talk. And the downside of this is there's no Q&A from your side. But we tried that, and that didn't work too well because the level of questions were retarded. Your son finds that especially amusing. Yeah. And so if you have questions, you're going to have to keep them to yourself. But Leanne and Graham have done a terrific job. And they'll tell you about it. And notwithstanding, couples rarely make it in this model. They knew that from 5 or 6 years ago. And so they're one of the very few. And I had the privilege of adding them to the Hall of Fame a few months ago. And so they may or may not talk about that. But I think it's really special that they brought their son. I said at Princeton, God knows this is a allegedly intellectual group. But what if you had gotten started when you were 12, 13, 14? As opposed to, and I pointed 2 or 3 guys that I knew, 40, 38, 50. You can't even imagine the standards that we'd have in the world today. We have the Corona still with us in some form or another around the world. And more recently, unfortunately, we have the Ukraine situation. And I'll talk a lot about it during the seminar, but I have a different perspective of Ukraine because many decades ago, I was a young officer where the Iron Curtain was. East Germans, Russians were on this side, and we were on this side. And I know how easy it is for NATO to get involved by some lackluster young officer or a crazy general to pull the button or push the button. So let's hope and pray that doesn't happen. Leanne, how has the relationship with QLA and directly or indirectly with me changed your family's life?
God, twofold, I think. When we first came to the seminar in 2016, we had 5 employees. Now we have over 650 employees. So from a work perspective, God, that's not even quadrupled, it's just phenomenal, the change. Family life, we're so much more focused on. We were always focused on teaching our kids what they're not taught in school. But the children, Mitchell can speak for himself. He watches, he follows yourself and others, to learn and grow himself. So he's doing what he sees us doing. And just wants to learn all the time. And I think he can tell you his story himself. He asked me, if I'm a millionaire when I'm 16, can I leave school? And I says, of course you can. So that's his aim.
Not leave home, just leave school?
Well, he wants to leave home. He wants to leave school and home. He wants to go to California, I think. So I don't know what the reason for California.
I can interject there. Having been a 16-year-old in California, the sun breaks your brains. It fries your brains too much because the weather is so good there. Young people want to be in the weather, and they're, although I know they have laptops and stuff like that, but depending on what you want to do, there are better places in the United States to go than New York City. I mean, at 16 would be phenomenal. New York City at 16 with money. Yeah. Not there's a saying here. Not sitting on your uppers. I mean, with and when you're going through the files before you got here, I'd forgotten that you're from Glasgow.
Yes.
Okay, and I was just going to ask you, do those 650 people all talk like you?
No. We have some Dundonians, some Glaswegians, so all a mix.
Yeah. Of course, I talk about it. 5 to 650 employees. If I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, $1 million turnover, and now hopefully this year 140 million or something like that. When I was having lunch with the luminaries of a political party, not the SNP, down in London a couple of weeks ago, and they asked me about my stars in Scotland because I'm looking to them for guidance about me getting involved in politics. And I told them about the Scottish couple, and they said, that's 5 employees. 6, I said 750 anyway. 750 employees. And he said, is it legal what they do? And I said, well, I'm going to ask them, but I'm almost positive it's legal what they do. But they were dumbfounded. But we'll talk more about that when we get to the policy. It's staggering. Now, for me, it's not. But I know when you meet people, especially Scottish people, they've got to be overwhelmed. And in some cases, I'm sure it's overwhelming to the potential seller or joint venture partner you're talking to. What the fuck happened? What are you doing? It's like when my dad visited me here at the castle the one time. We're walking into the drawing room, which you'll see with a big chandelier, Napoleon chandelier, and he looks up and he says, just tell me it's not drugs. Because the only thing my father could relate to that you make that much money that quickly is drugs. And I said, it's kind of drugs, Dad. It's oil and gas. But so, I mean, it's changed, and it does change. And you have to continue to be opening the doors and keep your eyes open. And when you have kids, and of course, 5, 6 years ago, well, you're still a kid. Well, you're all kids to me, but you were really a kid 5, 6 years ago. But a lot of the successful, and even not the less successful mentees I have, their children have been watching this stuff a long time. And so we're changing the next generation. When I told the politicos that I met with that you were doing business outside Scotland because it's hard to do business in Scotland. And I said, that's what I want to change in Angus. So I use that as a segue. But when you talk about that, it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe the Times article about you, the London Times, from council to, rich. It's a great article, and you're going to see the slide at least 4 or 5 times during the week. So I get used to being stared at. But they can't believe it. Or in this part of the world, they can't believe it. And when I fell into what I call my Scottish accent during the lunch at the Ritz, I'll get to the Ritz and you guys in a minute. The Ritz, they looked at me like I was retarded. And then one of the lawyers who I've known 25 years says, that's his bit. being cheeky, trying to sound Scottish. And these guys were English. And it didn't go over. It was like a turd in a punch bowl. I mean, they didn't think it was funny. Nobody laughed. You have wandered outside, and I know you've got Dubai, Spain, if I remember correctly, London, Dundee. Any place else?
Glasgow. Well, so we're looking at some opportunities at the moment in the UAE and Spain in particular. So we haven't reached the US yet, but yeah. Well,
the US are easy. You take it from me. I mean, it's like shooting fish in a barrel, taking candy from a baby. A couple of mean Scots. I mean, following in the footsteps of Andrew Carnegie, the wee guy from Dunfermline. And the Spanish, having part of my family comes from there. Now, how is it in the UAE?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of opportunity. That's what we see in terms of doing what we do on buying businesses and consolidating them. It's a bit trickier because the financials are not there. We can't see, so that it takes a bit longer. But so we're kind of trying to find our feet, but working with good local partners over there. So it was important for us to find out about the market really by basing ourselves there for a while. And but the opportunities are huge.
Well, that's what I hear. And of course, we've talked about, you're only as good as who your partner is there. And having made mistakes myself in my 50-year career, picking the wrong guy or the wrong gal. But the fact that I like the sound of from Dundee to Dubai. I mean, it's got kind of a ring to it. But I mean, people that are here in Scotland, whether it's Glasgow or Dundee, stay in Glasgow, in Dundee. I mean, I don't know any other Scots that are there. I'm sure there are, but I don't know. And it's like a different world. Well, it is a different world. It is a different world. But my experience there is they've been friendly as hell. I mean, they've been super friendly.
They have a really good energy for wanting to do business as well, which is
good environment, really good environment. You feed off that good energy and positivity. Everybody's hustling. Everybody. You're either there because you have money or you're there because you want to earn money. So there's this vibe going on. There's an energy about the place that we thrive on, to be honest. Even though we don't have to necessarily do business there, but it's a great environment for us and for the kids,
Well, there's 5 or 6 places in the world that are like that. In the old days, it was New York City. When I came to London in the early 80s, there was London, Tokyo, and not that many people will believe this, but right after the wall went down, Moscow, which I was there right after the wall went down in the early 90s. But now the Middle Eastern countries, Dubai. But I mean, there's a certain sacrifice. Like, I'm sure you don't think of it as a sacrifice, having to be there with your family, but some people would think of it as a sacrifice because you're away from the rest of your family, which, if I remember correctly, is not a bad thing.
No.
To be away from the rest of them. But that's why I came to London in 81, to be away from my family, because I was already considered rich, and I hadn't even scratched the surface yet. Because default is a bitch. People are going to say, if they haven't already said, well, why? They've already got money. They're already a success. They're already buying these companies. They're already getting these contracts. You're getting your picture done, taken with luminaries that some people work all their life and don't get to meet. And it's easy to fall back in that. It's less easy when your kids are part of the equation. I didn't do that. I made any mistakes. It was for 10 years straight. I won't say I rarely saw my kids, but they would tell you if they were sitting right here, you rarely saw us during those 10 years. But that was one of the personal sacrifices I made. I think when I see a picture of you online in the swimming pool with the kids, okay, I noticed he only shows his head above the waterline.
Six pack was underneath.
Yeah, I understand. Of course. Oh, there was an article that just came out. Two things that just were published. NATO published an article a week ago after a 4 or 5 or 6 year study vis-a-vis global warming and climate change. It's irrefutable in their mind. The world cannot be saved. Cannot. The only thing we should worry about is salvation of the human race. Okay. Now, I've been saying it.
You've been saying it for
forever.
years.
Okay. But the second thing is Harvard came out with a study. People that swear are more successful.
Oh, well.
I mean, except for when you're 14. When you're 14, and this 14-year-old at the Princeton thing, he said the F word. And I mean, you could cut the air. And then I looked over at his parents and, and he told the audience, I wish my parents, they were tough on me. They should have been tougher. Okay. But getting back to this. So NATO says it's irrefutable. And by the way, what does decarbonization mean? So decarbonization means, so you have a so let me give you an example. So you have a building that has a gas boiler in it, an old boiler that is fossil fuel driven and all that stuff. So we can replace that with an air source heat pump. So the carbon produced in that building through the gas boiler will be reduced, let's say it's 0.5 ton a year for 20 years. So we're decarbonizing the building. Okay. Yeah. So the boilers, I don't know what kind of, we just changed over the boilers here. But that's expensive.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But you're saving, you're saving the planet and you're saving in bills.
You're saving the planet even though we're past it. Yes. So you show them how much it saves, blah, 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 when the payback is. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And there's value in the carbon. There's value in the carbon savings. So, I mean,
is this about carbon credits?
Yeah, carbon credits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And how easy sale is that?
Well, that's on a small scale, not easy at all. So there's two markets. You've got the big market. So, for example, at the moment, Tesla if you look at the profits that Tesla make, almost to the penny, their profits are equivalent to the carbon credits that they sell to Volkswagen. So Volkswagen will never be net zero. They're a high polluter. So they have to offset that by buying carbon credits in the market. And in the marketplace, Volkswagen spent a fortune to Tesla, their competitor, on buying carbon credits because they're carbon negative. So there's a big value in that at that level. So we've got that's the main market, but there's the smaller market. So what there is, but as we get scale, there's value in those carbon credits that we're hoping to get to a point where we can sell them, and there's value in them. At the moment, at the level that we're doing it at, it isn't enough. But as this is ramping up, we think we'll be in a good place for that.
Has this idea of decarbonization been around a long time?
I think so.
I know carbon credits have been around a long time.
Yeah. It's only really beginning to really take shape now, though. Real momentum behind it.
Well, when I came here in 1984,